everybody. This is Jack Hammer. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about this game on Sunday that's coming up for the 49ers. Tomorrow afternoon, the 2-1 San Francisco 49ers will look to shake off their first loss of the season when they host their NFC West Division rival, Seattle Seahawks. Seattle comes in at 1-2 after dropping their Week 2 and 3 games against the Tennessee Titans and Minnesota Vikings. The NFC West is among the toughest divisions in the NFL, and with a loser falling into the division basement, both teams are going to be desperate to come back and get into the win column this week. So let's take a look at the 5 questions that I put together. That's what I think is going to determine the outcome of this game. And number 1, this happens every year you face the Seattle Seahawks, but can the 49ers defense contain Russell Wilson? The Seahawks come to this game on a 2-game losing streak. Wilson has never lost 3 in a row, and he's truly owned San Francisco throughout his career, winning 14 of his 18 starts. That's pretty darn impressive. And a big part of Wilson's success has been his ability to make plays with his legs, something that we've already seen cause problems for the 49ers this season. During San Francisco's 17-11 victory over Philadelphia 2 weeks ago, the defense allowed Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts to run for 82 yards and a touchdown on only 10 carries. If Wilson is able to get loose like that on Sunday, it's going to be a long day for the 49ers. Last week, we saw the 49ers defense only be able to hit Aaron Rodgers twice on 34 pass attempts. And Wilson's ability to move should provide another difficult challenge for San Francisco's pass rush. Nick Bosa currently leads the 49ers in sacks with 3, and he's going to be looking to bring down Wilson for the first time in his career on Sunday. He's played 2 games against Seattle so far, no sacks at all yet this year, or against Wilson, excuse me. And then take that one step further, and when it comes to the sacks and Wilson's ability to run and move, it's going to only make it that much more difficult to defend. Even on the passing side, where that pass rush is going to have struggled to get to him. Wilson throws one of the best deep balls in the NFL, and this season, he may be playing the best of his career. Through the first 3 weeks of the season, he's completed 73% of his passes. He's averaging 10.4 yards per attempt, and he has a quarterback rating of 133.6, all of which are career highs. So that makes this passing game going to be very difficult for the 49ers to defend. And I agree with this. Jack Hammer is definitely better than Jack Daniels. You got that right. Number 2, and this has been a question really since week 1, can the 49ers run defense step up? And it's really going to be important this week. We saw it last week with Green Bay, how Green Bay was able to get themselves into second and manageable situations on a regular basis, and what that looks like when you're playing against a good quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. They're facing another really good quarterback this week now in Russell Wilson. And, defending the run has just been such a struggle all year long for the 49ers. And right now, they're allowing the 6th highest number of yards per attempt in the league. And on Sunday, they're going to be going up against a Seahawks offense that is averaging 5.1 yards per carry, which I believe is right around 4th or in the top 5 for sure in rushing attacks on the offensive side of the ball in the league. So that's going to be tough for the 49ers defense. They're going to have to really try to step up, and it's going to make some things really interesting with the way that they try to match up. And the reason I say it is because they've really struggled when they've been aligned with both of their defensive linemen out wide in their kind of wide 9 set. When they go into their setup where they have a defensive lineman over the center, so kind of an odd front, they do much better against the run. But when they have their safeties, when they have 2 deep safeties, especially, if you can see them on the TV screen, you'll notice that most of the time when they're in that alignment, their defensive tackles are lined up over the guards, maybe a little bit to their outside. On one side of them, they'll be on the outside shade. The other one's about on the inside. And the problem that allows the offensive linemen to get at their double teams really easy on those 2 guys and create a space up the middle. And most often, the 49ers linebackers aren't able to fill the gap quick enough. And so that's why you're seeing teams, when they get into that situation against the 49ers, pick up, a good 5 yards on a regular basis, good chunks of yardage there. The other part of it that's a problem, and the reason why that's a problem, is that if you're going to be playing that odd front where you have the man over the center, most of the time when the 49ers do that, it forces them into a single high safety look. And when you look at a defense that has the injury concerns that the 49ers have in the secondary, and their safety is most likely going to be needing to help with coverage against Seattle wide receivers like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, that's a big issue that these guys, that the 49ers are going to be facing this week. They're going to, their best pass defense is to have their two safeties high. But when they do that, they don't stop the run very well, and so there's your two big issues there in that. So pay attention to how the 49ers align when they have four down linemen. Watch what kind of yardage Seattle's picking up compared to when they have that guy over the center. That's the easiest way that I can explain it for those of you that are watching on the TV is where are the defensive linemen lined up? If there's a man over the center, that generally means, especially if you can't see the safeties in coverage, most of the time if there's a man over the center, they have one safety deep. And if they don't have a man over the center and they just have four down linemen across, that's usually when they have two deep safeties. So just kind of keep an eye on that. The next one is, are the 49ers going to be able to even handle Seattle's passing attack? Like I mentioned earlier, Russell Wilson's having a very good season. I know they lost to Minnesota last week, but early in that game, Seattle moved the ball up and down the field. There was a point where it looked like they were going to be able to score again, except for there was a fumble that killed that drive. But they've been really good this year. The Seattle's passing game is among the best in the NFL, averaging about 9 yards per attempt, which is a big number. That's the third highest total in the league. So you have Russell Wilson, as I mentioned earlier, and his top two targets being wide receivers DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Compare those two to anything else across the league. Their combined average right now is 173 yards receiving per game just between those two, with Metcalf averaging right about 13.8 yards per reception and Lockett averaging 19.3. The Lockett number is a big one, 19.3. That's a big total. And part of that too is he's been targeted 20 times, and only of the 20 balls that have been thrown to Lockett, only 4 of them have hit the ground. So that's going to be a tough task for the 49ers secondary, especially one that lost Jason Verrett in the opening game of the season. Jason, and then his replacement Josh Norman, who played well in the beginning of the game last week. He's likely to miss on Sunday following that chest injury against Green Bay that left him with bruised lungs, spitting up blood. And if Norman's out, the 49ers are going to have to turn to either Deommodore Lenoir, who's a rookie, who we saw struggle at the end of the game on Sunday night, or they're going to have to go to maybe recent free agent acquisition Drake Kirkpatrick, who we haven't seen yet this year, or old standby Dante Johnson. And it doesn't even end there. So that's just one injury that the 49ers are dealing with in the secondary. In addition, the 49ers pass defense is going to be without their nickelback, K'Wan Williams. He's already been ruled out of the game with a calf injury. And so according to Kyle Shanahan, look for either Dante Johnson to step into that slot corner role or Buster Skrine to line up inside. And Buster Skrine, they just signed a couple of days ago, who's new to the team and had an awful season in 2020. So it's going to be a very difficult game for the 49ers defense, as this commenter, I can't even say that name, so I'm not going to try, so I apologize. But 49ers have no corners, and it's going to be difficult for the 49ers, and that's 100% sure what's going to happen there. And then, so for the defense, it's going to be rough. It's going to be a rough game. And then on top of, not only are they dealing with these wide receivers that are really good, but new Seattle the offensive coordinator Shane Waldron, he's coming off of spending his last 5 seasons working underneath Rams head coach Sean McVay. They spent a year together in Washington, and then he's been an assistant under McVay down with the Rams for the last 4 years. And it's easy to see the influence of McVay on Waldron's offense, especially the way that he uses 2 tight ends. So you've got Will Disley, who's been with the Seahawks for a while, and then they paired him with former Ram Gerald Everett, and they've started all 3 games. So they come out 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers, 1 running back most of the time. Disley and Everett have combined to catch 12 of 13 targets that have come their way this year, and they're averaging 51 receiving yards per game. So when you add that 51 yards to the 173, that's a pretty good number, and that's not even taking into account the other guys on this team that catch passes, and there's some really good 3rd and 4th receivers and running backs that add in there as well. So with that pair of tight ends, it's going to cause some problems for the 49ers linebackers, safeties. So this is a really tough matchup for the 49ers, I think, on the defensive side of the ball again. If you're playing your guys deep to take away the Metcalf and Lockett, you're opening up those underneath rows for the tight ends and the running backs. And if you try to take away those running backs and tight ends, then they can hit you over the top. So this defense is going to be spread pretty thin. on Sunday. I believe it's going to require a big game from the 49ers defense to really, if they can step up and play well in this one. And that's what leads me into the number 4. I've had my first 3 topics have all been about the 49ers defense. So let's switch this over, because I think everybody that's watching this and everybody that's really looked at this game, I think can see that the 49ers defense should struggle in this one, or have their struggles. And so what's going to happen, even on the 49ers side of the ball, the question is, can Jimmy Garoppolo, is he going to be able to actually carry the 49ers offense? The 49ers running game, it's usually been the catalyst for the offense, but it's struggled really bad this season. They had a couple of big plays at the beginning of the season against Detroit. They averaged, I think I mentioned this last week, 65 yards on their first 6 attempts of the season. But since that, they've pretty much been shut down. And for the year, they're only averaging 3.6 yards per rushing attempt. So right now, the 49ers offense, as far as their average yards per rush, is the 8th lowest total in the NFL. That's not going to cut it against Seattle if they're being held to that kind of run game. Again, we saw that on Sunday night that they were shut down, and it took a while for the offense to get on track. So if that's the case, if the offense can't get the running game going against Seattle, whose defense, admittedly the Seattle defense has struggled against the run, but the part of that is that they played against some really good offensive lines with some good running backs behind them, and right now the 49ers offensive line, at least through the first 3 weeks, has not been good. So the weight of moving the ball, I think, in this game is likely going to fall on the shoulders of Jimmy Garoppolo. And again, that's a tough one for the 49ers. Garoppolo has made 3 starts against Seattle during his time in San Francisco, and he's only won once. He's 1-2 in those starts. He lost He lost the first game in 2019, was able to pull out the win the second time when they met up in Seattle a little bit later on in the season. And then they lost last year in a really bad game. And in those 3 games that he's played against Seattle, Garoppolo's numbers have not been good. He's only 53 of 84, so about 63% completion rate, 617 yards. You got to remember, he didn't even finish the game last year up in Seattle. He left after 3 quarters. In those 3 games, he has thrown 1 touchdown pass, 2 interceptions, and he has a passer rating of only 79.3. So this is going to be, again, a tough task for Garoppolo, even for the 49ers offense, if they don't get this running game going. And then to make matters even worse and more difficult for Garoppolo, George Kittle has missed practice all week, and his availability to play is going to be a game-time decision. So, you take into account Garoppolo's struggles against Seattle. You take out now one of the better weapons that they have in George Kittle. And not having Kittle is going to be a big blow against the Seattle defense, especially, that really likes to force opposing offenses to play underneath, hit those short to intermediate throws, and be consistent driving the ball down the field in order to get down there and score. So I think what you're going to see is, if Kittle doesn't play, you're going to be seeing more of Ross Dwelley, the people's tight end, who is the real people's tight end, out there anyway. And that'll be good, because I think Dwelley is a guy that's underutilized. He doesn't have the run after catch ability that Kittle has, but he's a darn good tight end and a really good receiving tight end. And he might be able to help out. What's interesting here is, the 49ers in this game, what I would expect to see, some more play action stuff, where their play action kind of maybe rolling him out after, go back to and remind yourself of early in the Detroit Lions game. One of the early throws in that game was Garoppolo play actioning a run to his left, rolling out to his right, dumping it off to Kittle underneath, and then Kittle takes it 10, 15 yards downfield after he catches the ball for a nice gain. And that's the kind of stuff that the 49ers offense, in this game, when I look at it, I'm saying these are the things that the 49ers need to do, would be those little play action passes like that to Kittle. If you've watched any of Seattle, you've noticed they've had some struggles against screens and things like that. So maybe running some screen plays to running backs would be helpful, but there's no JaMychal Hasty, who's really the best 49ers running back that's still available with Raheem Mostert out. So even the screen game to the underneath guys, I think, is going to be a little bit of a struggle. I'm sure Shanahan will try to get a little creative and do some things with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and so on, especially if Kittle's not going. But I think it's going to be a little bit of a struggle for the 49ers. And it's going to be interesting to see how they can move the ball down the field. This lack of a running game really hurts them. And as we saw Steve Young say earlier this week, and that's partly why I put this up here, and along with the fact that the running game's not going so well, is Garoppolo's going to have to throw the ball probably another 40 times in this game. And if that's the case, is he going to be able to do it? And, last week he was able to get it together. The 49ers offense was able to get 28 points. There was some help along the way with the long kickoff return. And obviously there was the backwards pass, which was awful. The offense was still able to put up 28 points there. So maybe this week the 49ers are able to come out and do the same thing against a team that's maybe not quite as good on defense. But when you look at the fact that this is a divisional game, it makes these games always tougher. And then the last point is, can the 49ers offense score more than 7 points in the first half? The 49ers offense has been almost non-existent during the first half during these last two games, being held to only a single first down during the first quarter against Green Bay, and they didn't even record one at all during the week prior in Philadelphia. And then on top of that, it would take until the closing minutes of the first half in both games for the offense to finally put points on the board. Both the 7 points against Philly and the 7 points against Green Bay both come in the closing seconds of the half. So, in order for San Francisco to be a legitimate playoff contender, which I think they have the capability to be, their offense and defense are going to need to play a full game, and they haven't done that yet. And I want to make sure that I point that out, that it's not just the offense, it is the defense as well that struggled early on in games. And last week, the focus of these last 2 weeks has been on the offense, and the fact that the offense hasn't scored or really even moved the ball at all. But you need to remember the 49ers defense has allowed teams to go right down the field on them early in both games, especially against Green Bay. Green Bay went right down the field on them. The third play of the game was a 40-plus yard pass that puts the defense down inside their own, almost to the red zone. Next play is a little screen pass that puts them down in the red zone, and then Bosa bails them out with three really nice plays in a row to force a field goal. But then Green Bay gets the ball back after a decent 49er possession where they gained the first down, and goes 80 yards right back down the field. Another big pass over the safeties this time. And so the defense needs to step up as well and kind of help keep this team in. It's going to take a total team effort here, and we'll see what happens. I have this game as my prediction for Sunday. I'm going to say Seahawks 27, 49ers 24. If the 49ers are able to pull this out, I hope you all can come on here and tell me that I was wrong. I'd love to have that be the result. But with the way that this game is kind of laying out right now, I don't see how the 49ers are going to be able to win this game. And it's not even about part of it is about the quarterback, obviously. But on top of that, the injuries on the defensive side of the ball are really in bad spots. Their secondary, we knew coming into this season, the secondary had a number of guys that were coming in here with injury histories. We all knew or should have known that Jason Verrett had never played more than been able to even reach double digits in back-to-back seasons. And we've seen how that's played out. He made it through 3.5 quarters in the first game, and he's out of here. We knew that Jaquiski Tartt has been an injury problem throughout his his career, especially more recently in the last 4. He's played only a few more games than Garoppolo. Fortunately, he's healthy right now, but he missed a lot of time during the preseason. And then you have K'Waun Williams, and K'Waun Williams in the slot has never played a full season in the NFL. He's always missed at least a couple of games, and he's out now. So it's just the way that it is. Now you've got the constant mixing and matching going on, and this is just the way that it's been for the 49ers for the better part of the last 2, for sure last year, and really the better part of this whole regime under Kyle Shanahan and so on. So, a couple of things. I mentioned this in the at the beginning, but Wilson has never lost 3 games in a row. He's lost 2 games in a row, but he's never lost 3. It should be pointed out with that Jimmy Garoppolo has never lost back-to-back games as a starting quarterback. He's and that's part of what's been successful with him. So why his numbers are what they are. And then quarterback limitations, secondary is garbage, O-line overrated, head coach has his head not where it needs to be. Absolutely. They're I've if you've watched my shows, if you've seen what I've written this week in the Press Democrat and so on, you know that my take hasn't been just that it's a Jimmy Garoppolo problem. A lot of folks are blaming everything on Garoppolo. I've tried to keep a little bit more of a level approach to that because I don't think it's Garoppolo. I know that there are issues with his game, but the issues with his game aren't causing all the other problems that the 49ers have. It's Alex Mack and Daniel Brunskill being unable to win one-on-one matchups doesn't at the line of scrimmage doesn't have anything to do with safeties playing tight because of Jimmy Garoppolo being under center. Jimmy Garoppolo playing quarterback isn't the reason why the defense is getting beat up in the run game. It's not the reason why the secondary is struggling the way that they've struggled. At least last week against Philadelphia, and probably would have struggled, against Green Bay last week, and probably would have struggled against the other teams like we saw Detroit throw the ball right down the field on them once they got into their soft package like what we saw at the end of the game. So everyone asks, Jack, who runs the 49ers personnel? That's John Lynch. John Lynch and Adam Peters are your personnel, the heads of the personnel department. Lynch is obviously the general manager. Kyle Shanahan has a big say in that as well. And I mentioned this earlier in the week. I think that 2021, I know it's been sold to a lot of folks in terms of this being another Super Bowl run. And I really think that this 2021 season was designed to be a placeholder for a bigger run in 2022 with Trey Lance at quarterback and a big turnover of the roster. The 49ers came into this year with the salary cap going down. They weren't, they drafted a quarterback that wasn't going to be ready to start right away. I think they knew that. They tried to make some adjustments and move off of Garoppolo. They weren't able to do that, and I think that's kind of what led them to drafting Trey Lance to begin with. But when you look at this, they went out and knowing that it was going to be a little bit of a transition year, they were able to go out and bring back a bunch of their old veterans, regardless of the things that the injury histories and those kind of things. But those are guys that the fan base knows. And so they're able to sell that as, hey, we're making another run at the playoffs. We're making another run at the Super Bowl. And we know that fans are going to come out and they're going to buy the tickets. They're going to buy the jerseys. And, right now the 49ers are able to double dip on, selling Jimmy Garoppolo jerseys and Trey Lance jerseys at the same time when they have really two quarterbacks like that. They're still able to pack the stands because this is a team that people think are going to win and have a chance to go places. And so in a lot of ways, I think this team is built it has been built, and everything they've done this offseason, especially through the draft, was all designed to making 2022 and beyond as strong as it can be. Luke says the clock chewing running game is key to the 49ers defensive game. It was absent versus the Packers. The key to hanging with Seattle is establishing a decent run game early. And that's absolutely correct. And it's going to be interesting to see how Seattle comes out and attacks the 49ers defense. From what I saw last week, it looked like they were coming out against the Vikings with a little bit, running that odd front that the 49ers have had trouble with a man over the nose. The interior, the other two, the defensive ends in their odd front lining up on the outside shade of the guards. And if that's the case this week, it's going to be interesting to see if the 49ers can actually establish a running game. That's really what teams have been doing. We saw Philadelphia do that and take away the running game. And we saw the Packers do the same thing. And part of the reason their teams are able to do that is because you're not getting any push out of Brunskill and Mack. And so you're not able to get to the second level. And now you have linebackers that are running free, and they're able to run downhill and stop those guys. And that's really been the biggest issue in their running game is their inability to move people at the line of scrimmage. And then Fable says, I'm guessing you're speculating. I think he's talking about my my take that they're really building for 2022. Yeah, no, total speculation on my part. I don't have any intel on that from anybody inside the 49ers. That's just me looking at it from the outside, looking at the moves they make and kind of remembering back to 2018. If you go back to 2018, the 49ers had just come off that 5-game win streak at the end of the year. And there was a lot of fans who were really excited about the prospects for 2018. The 49ers had some definite needs on that roster, especially defensive end, and they didn't make any moves. And they just kind of let it ride. And we saw how that season played out, and they ended up with getting Nick Bosa at the top of the draft the next year, and it changed their team around along with the addition of Dee Ford. So definite speculation on my part, just kind of looking at it from the outside in. Luke says, I'm sticking to the crazy notion Steve Young floated pre-draft on BYU Sports that the 49ers traded up hoping for Zach Wilson. Lynch got bad intel. The Jets were taking someone else at 2. That could be the case. That could be the case. I mean, we haven't heard. Young's the only one that's put that out there. It's interesting when you hear this stuff because I'm sure the 49ers were really doing a lot of due diligence and homework on Zach Wilson, which would make this make sense. There was an article in a Boston newspaper a couple of weeks ago about the 49ers doing a lot of digging into the background of Mac Jones. So that they were using that to say that the 49ers were indeed interested in Mac Jones. I think if you looked at the guys in this draft, I think if you look at Jones, you look at Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, those 4 guys, I'm pretty sure if you talk to people around those 4 guys, the 49ers were doing the homework on all of them because that's the position that they had keyed in on if they wanted to address this offseason through the draft. And they were doing their homework to try to figure out which one of those guys was going to be the fit and if the chance came up, who were they going to take? And so I wouldn't be surprised if they really did their homework on all of them. Let's see who else we have. Jack, Bobby Wagner knows every play in Jimmy's playbook. Time to use Trey. Yeah, okay. I mean, the deal here with Trey Lance, and I think it's interesting, is that the 49ers offense will change a little bit with Trey Lance. It's going to be mostly the same plays. The difference is now you have a running quarterback that's in there. And maybe I'm right, but or wrong, but I don't feel like putting Trey Lance in the game right now is going to make a big change to this 49ers offense for the simple fact that their offensive linemen aren't able to win at the point of attack, and they're losing early on passing downs, and they're not able to get pushed in the run game. Lance might be able to throw those linebackers off a little bit, with some of the different movement. But we've seen Lance on the field now for some running plays. He did not look good at all in Detroit running the ball, and some of that was the stuff that people think he's going to open up. On Sunday night he had the one nice play, which was just a quarterback sweep. And they were able to set that one up nicely. And that's a play that Shanahan's run with other quarterbacks as well in the past. And we've seen him do that with I know for sure with CJ Beathard. We might have seen him do it with Mullins and Jimmy Garoppolo as well. Let's see what else we got here. Fable says, I think the head coach goes before Trey does. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that well, I don't know. I think what's going to happen here is if that's what happens, if they decide that they're going to move on from the head coach, it's going to be the result of the 49ers losing. It's going to be the result of Trey Lance coming in and not being the guy that they expect him to be. And so the team just continues to lose. So it's one of those situations where, if Trey Lance doesn't develop, Shanahan will be gone as a result. That move up to 3 to take a quarterback, if that guy doesn't pan out, given the way that this team has played during Kyle Shanahan's tenure, take away, you can make whatever excuse or explanation for the lack of success. He's now picked his quarterback multiple times and who he wants to be. He picked Jimmy Garoppolo. He agreed on it. He agreed to give the money to Garoppolo. He liked Garoppolo. in 2017. If he didn't like him, he wouldn't have taken him or made the trade. He wouldn't have been on board with it. And if that's the case, if all these decisions are against Kyle Shanahan, as some people will probably discuss, what are the 49ers doing? And I don't really see it that way. I think that Shanahan has a lot of say in everything that goes in here. And I think the one thing that should be noted is the guys that Kyle Shanahan usually wants so far have not panned out. Go through the list of the guys that we know Kyle Shanahan vouched for, and the results are not very good. Luke says, anyone else missing all 22 in NFL Game Pass? It's actually back. The all 22 is there. It's an awful platform now. They made some changes. They no longer show you both plays, the play from both angles. They don't show you the sideline and the end zone view all the time. They only give you one. It's in I think 1080 high def, but it's not good. It's much harder to click through the plays, and so that's partly why I'm not. Even though I have NFL Game Pass, because they charged me before I realized that they didn't have the all 22 early on in the season, and it was going to look the way that it does now. It's there. It's just not a very good platform anymore, and that's why most people aren't utilizing it. I'm getting Bill O'Brien vibes with Kyle's ego trip. I don't know if it's the ego, but the way that he manages his quarterbacks is definitely something to keep an eye on there for sure. Edwin says Bosa needs to get subbed more. I don't know if he needs to be subbed more. They don't really have anybody to substitute in. This, in 2019, when he was a rookie, they didn't, especially early in the season, that first half of the year, they were able to rotate Bosa out because they had a good backup in place there. I'm forgetting his name, and I apologize, but it was number 98, and he's with the Jets now. Might have been released recently. Ronald Blair. I knew if I talked about it long enough, I'd remember. But Ronald Blair was a really good backup in 2019. When Bosa would go off the field and Blair would come on, there would be very little drop off from one to the next. Blair obviously wasn't at Bosa's level, but at least when you bring him in, it's not that it wasn't the big drop off. And then he got hurt. I believe it was in the Seattle game of that year, and then from that point on, Bosa had to play a higher amount of reps. So let's see. What else have we got here? My partner over here, Jesse, says your video title, the short answer, no. We'll see. I don't know. That's probably partly why I have the 49ers losing this game is I think the offense is going to be okay. I just don't see this defense, and so I think the offense is going to have to make up. I don't know if they're going to be able to score enough points. Let's see what else we got. I got a whole bunch of them over here trying to keep up with you guys before I head out. Can blitzing punish defenses for chipping our D ends? So I think what you're asking is if instead of just playing a straight up defense, they start using blitzes as a way of getting around that. I'm not quite sure there. I know this is a concerning question in terms of, listening to what Nick Bosa had to say during his time at the podium. I believe it was on Thursday, and they started asking him questions about all the chips and all those types of things. And he mentions the fact that the 49ers, with all those chips going on, that they have, games that they can run and chip beaters that they can run. They just need to be called. That's concerning. If you go into a game and you don't have those in your bag and you don't have those on your call sheet, what are you doing, really? If you, especially in that situation, if you're the defensive coordinator and you have guys up in the booth and you're seeing your defensive ends getting chipped the way that they were, they need to be able to make an adjustment. Especially look at the end of the game. Let's take the end of the game, for example. On the first play there, Bosa and Ford both just get blown up on chips. And you could see by the alignment what was going to be happening. I don't understand why there wasn't an adjustment made there. That's just part of the issues that I have with the way that game went down at the end. But Luke got back to me and he kind of clarified this a little bit. He says if they're keeping their halfbacks or tight ends into Chip Bosa and Ford, that means they probably aren't ready to pick up blitzers, and that's true. And that's where if the problem, it depends on the situation. In an end of game situation like what the 49ers were in on Sunday, you can't really blitz. You can, but you're more worried about keeping everything in front of you. So that's partly why they were able to run those chips as easy as they were. But yeah, maybe in the middle of the game, I see what you're saying. Maybe in the middle of the game, do that a little bit around and do that. And Jesse mentions here, and I've said this a couple of times, moving Bosa and getting him off of the edge, moving him to the defensive tackle spot, maybe aligning him up on the inside and putting basically flopping him with Samson Ebukam, because right now most of the time when Ebukam and Bosa are on the field together, Ebukam's the one rushing from inside and Bosa's still on the outside coming off on that wide 9. Flip them around. Let Bosa work against those guys on the interior, and work an edge against a tackle or a center, or even let them get double teamed and maybe have one of these other guys come off it and make a play. There's all kinds of things that you can do there, and it just wasn't. We didn't see any adjustments, and it's the stunts and all those kind of things that you guys are mentioning. I agree with you, and that's what they're talking about against the like with when they're talking about when they say running games, they're talking about that's defensive line speak for stunts and twists and all those kinds of things. How many times will our gap discipline be non-existent and Russ escape the pocket on a key play? Over under 4 times? Oh yeah, I'd say that's probably going to be. I'd say over that he's going to be able to get outside the pocket. The problem with the 49ers, I'd really like to see Samson Ebukam play in this game more than I'd like to see D Ford. And the reason is D Ford is as good of a job as he does getting up the field in the pass rush. Again, he struggles to keep that contained, and that's the side of the field that Jalen Hurts exposed in that game week 2 against Philadelphia. So, Ebukam's not going to give you that pass rush speed around the edge, but what he does is he's able to get pressure and he tries to really drive that tackle back. He's kind of like the defensive end version of Javon Kinlaw, in that he doesn't really have many pass rush moves. It's mostly just a bull rush. But where Ebukam is different is Ebukam's ability to, as a linebacker, I think is, because he was a linebacker before, he does a very good job of being able to shed blockers. And he has the speed that I think he can help with keeping Wilson in the pocket and then forcing him to step up, which is where guys like Armstead and DJ Jones and Kentavious Street would be able to eat and get their sacks. So that would be an adjustment I'd like to see, is Ebukam in place of Ford, at least this week, more often. Luke says tackling stunts would be great. Also fun watching a running back try to chip Jones or Kinlaw. Yeah, that'd be fun. That would be interesting to see those big guys on the edge and have a defensive end trying to step down and block those guys. So definitely would be something to keep an eye on. But so just running through really quick the topics again that I had discussed earlier today, without going into detail on them like I did earlier. The 49ers are going to need to somehow figure out a way to keep Wilson in the pocket, not let him beat him with his legs, and there's going to be a struggle for their secondary with stopping him, because he just throws such a nice deep ball. I think he throws the best deep ball in the game, and part of that is he just throws that ball up so high that it allows, most of the time, just allows his receivers to run underneath it and make a play on it. The defensive backs usually have trouble with it. Can the 49ers run defense step up? They've struggled. 49ers are one of the worst against the run in the NFL, while Seattle's offense is one of the best in the league running the ball. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Can they do that? Are they going to be able to? How are they going to handle Metcalf and Lockett along with Gerald Everett and Will Disley? That's going to be tough. Garoppolo carrying the 49ers offense. If the 49ers win this game and he carries the offense, it's going to be interesting to see the narrative around this team and how it changes this week. And if he doesn't, it'll just continue the way it's going. And can the 49ers score in the first half? So those are the three that I have. Those are the three that I have, or the five that I have. I hope that everybody is able to go out, have fun this week, have some fun today, get ready for a big game tomorrow. The 49ers are going to have a tough game tomorrow. It's going to be a tough one. Seattle coming in, Seattle week. This is always one of the biggest games of the year. The 49ers I will note, they do play better against Seattle generally at Levi Stadium or when they play home, as opposed to when they have to go up to Seattle. They played them really tough last year at the end of the season in Arizona. It was a 27-24 game in 2019 when they played. Even in 2018 and 2017, the 49ers played them tough at Levi. So it's going to be a tight game, and enjoy it. The one thing that Rob says over here is, the 49ers aren't winning the turnover battle. The 49ers aren't winning the turnover battle because they're not stopping the run. And by the time quarterbacks are throwing the ball, it's usually deep in 49er territory, and those balls aren't in the air long enough. So anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed the show today. I'll be back with you tomorrow. I will be, hopefully traffic isn't too bad getting into the stadium tomorrow, and I'll be able to jump on and do the pregame show with Sunil. That was our plan last week, and traffic intervened there. So hopefully the traffic isn't too bad, and we're able to actually get that show going. And regardless, I will be back tomorrow afternoon after the game with a recap, and then a bunch of shows throughout the week as well. So I really appreciate everybody that joined this morning. If you liked what you saw, hit that like button, smash it, as some people are going to say. And like Luke says, if you're on IR, merely just press it or click the like button, depending on if you're healthy or not. And please comment and subscribe and do all those kind of things to help build the channel. I appreciate everybody coming on, and we will be back tomorrow. Have a good day, everybody.